So how are we? Are we all right?
Good.
What's your heart rate?
Good.
It went up, 85.
85.
Yeah.
Let me check mine. It's going to
Yeah,
take a little
90.
while. 88. So I guess we're just
Yeah,
about right.
not bad.
Who has a Fitbit here? Just raise your hand. Fitbits. Who's got a mechanical watch? And what about the watch Dupont? Apple Watch. That's French, I think. Is that French? So what we're going to talk about today is a few things. You guys have been in the hardware startup game. I want to tell a little story. These guys came runner-up at TechCrunch 50,
50, yeah.
which was our original thing before Jason Callaghan yelled at Mike and everything changed. And these were the first hardware startup guys. I used to run Gizmodo. I used to run Crunch Gear. And I used to talk about gadgets. I used to go look at Sony and Samsung and LG. And the big companies were the ones who were the most newsworthy and the ones we were fighting to get coverage of. And all of a sudden, this tiny little nugget comes out that you're supposed to put in your pocket and walk around with. And it was the first actual hardware startup that was successful. And it was one of the fascinating. You pointed out that Flip was before that, but I think Flip was sort of an interstitial between the big guys putting out tiny little cameras, and then all of a sudden you had like this strange little upstart. So why don't you tell us the story of what it took back in 2008 to make that little nugget, that little first Fitbit?
Yeah, so actually the inspiration for the company came from the Nintendo Wii. So it was late 2006, and I was really excited about the Wii coming out, waited at Best Buy at 6 a.m. to get it, took it home, and was just really fascinated by the way Nintendo had combined sensors and really amazing software and made gaming into something that was really active and fun and positive. So my co-founder and I, Eric, thought, how do we capture a lot of that magic and put it into more portable form? So that was the start of Fitbit. We didn't know anything about hardware at the time. We're both software people. So in hindsight, it was probably something really dumb for us to do, launch a hardware company. But we thought at the very minimum, it would be a great learning experience. So we ended up raising a small friends and family round, about 400,000. And we used that to build a prototype that we took to TechCrunch in 2008.
Okay, and what did the prototype look like? Because I don't even remember. Did it look like the little nugget?
Yeah, it was a little circuit board. And then the night before TechCrunch 50, Eric bought some balsa wood at, I think, Home Depot, and then glued together, cut the wood and glued together a little case for the circuit board. So that was what I wore on stage.
So the ironic thing now is that at that point that was the epitome of high tech, whereas now these guys have 3D printed cases. A lot of the stuff that you see.
Yeah, that was like 3D printing, beyond our imagination at that point.
And John, when did you start messing with these guys?
Sure. So I met James and Eric in the summer of 2008. They were introduced to me by one of our other founders, Seth Sternberg at Meebo. And he called me and he said, "You're never going to believe this. I've got two friends who are software people that want to start, of all things, a hardware company." And for context, 2008, nobody was doing anything in hardware. I mean, to your point, there was nothing else in the category. Twitter had 3 million users in 2008. TweetDeck had just launched. There was no action in building anything sort of in the hardware category. And also in sports and fitness, it was also sort of, we talked about earlier, a very challenging place for venture capital. And what I loved when I met them, they actually had this little kind of mock-up product, but what I loved was that James and Eric were software people. They had built 2 software companies. And their insight was that hardware wasn't just about hardware. It was actually about the connected component, the software. And if you looked at the pedometer market, for example, in 2008, you would have found maybe $100 million worth of sales of analog pedometers. So it wasn't about anything that existed. It was about creating an entirely new experience and making this invisible piece of our lives, activity, suddenly visible and actionable. And so for me, that magic spark happened instantly when I met James and Eric. And yet it was extraordinarily contrarian. I mean, we were called stupid and crazy and all sorts of other things along the way to put venture capital into a consumer hardware company. And by the way, we closed on September 15th of 2008. For context, on September 13th, Lehman Brothers failed. The venture capital market shut down entirely after that. There were 0 venture-backed IPOs in the Q4 of 2008. I mean, it was just a wasteland, which is what we loved best. I mean, that was a really, really exciting time for us to work with this kind of a mission.
You got a lot of equity from James on the cheap.
No, we actually closed we closed on our deal, the same deal we negotiated in the summer. We closed with no changes. Actually, James called me over the weekend.
For the time, it was a good valuation.
So it was like buying a house. It was like buying a house before 2008, and you're getting really excited. You're going to flip it, and then all of a sudden you can't do it anymore. Well, that's pretty.
We take a long-term view to venture capital, so we were thinking about 20 years, not 2 years.
So I'm a wearable agnostic. I'm wearing this today just for kicks, just to anger you, and it's very difficult, I found.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I'm not a very angry person.
It's like the biggest problem with this. Watch. So I want to check the time because I'm getting bored. I can't do it. It doesn't do it. I cannot get this thing. Oh, there now it's lit up. Yeah. So that doesn't. It's
a new skill you can.
Yeah, you just have to tap it. But how are you going to beat these guys? What's the timeline in terms? So you came in a space that didn't exist now, but now all of a sudden everybody and their dog has a Fitbit clone or has some feature of Fitbit. How are you going to beat Apple? How are you going to beat Google? How are you going to beat even Garmin and Polar, who have been doing this for years, and they have the ear of the triathlete, of which I am one, obviously, for my physique. Mm-hmm. But you have these really specific pieces of hardware for the guys who are going to run 40 miles a day, like myself, and then you have these non-specific pieces of hardware that do everything for everybody, and then you have you guys. You guys are in this odd space, and we were talking about this before. How can you maintain this trajectory without going either way? And is that even a question? Is that even a concern?
Yeah. So I think observers and press actually like to view almost every market as some type of life and death battle with a winner take all. But the health and fitness category is a pretty large and diverse opportunity. Consumers spend over $200 billion in health and fitness products and services. So there's going to be a lot of different companies that win in different ways in this market. And for us in Apple, we don't see ourselves as directly competitive today. And the numbers show it. I mean, year over year, our revenue tripled to over $400 million last quarter. The guidance that we gave analysts on our last earnings call was $1.7 billion in revenue this year. So we're doing incredibly well. And I think consumers like the fact that we're really focused in the category. People trust our products to deliver results in health and fitness. We have a broad range of products, different price points, different styles, cross-platform compatibility. We have a lot of focus on battery life, which is important for this category. So there's a lot of different ways that we try to cater to consumer needs, and consumers love us for that.
And that Target deal was pretty good for you guys too, right?
Yeah, corporate wellness is a big thing. In the U.S. particularly, health insurance costs are an incredible problem. And companies are looking for any way using technology to help their employees get healthier. And the Target deal, that was 335,000 employees, that was a big win for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, John, everyone I talk to who invested in Fitbit, everybody's a real cheerleader for it. So why don't you maintain that tradition? And let's talk a little bit about your vision that not everyone's going to buy an iPhone and an Apple Watch, or a Samsung phone and a Samsung Wear. Yeah. But instead they're going to buy something like this. Yeah.
So I think people underestimate the size of this market when you think it's about one device versus another. I mean, the way we see the wearables market, and True's invested in over 40 hardware and device companies, over $100 million in the category. We're the largest investor in the category. Wearables is one of these, like the internet, like cloud, like robotics, one of these very, very large horizontal markets, and literally, kind of encompasses huge segments of population for huge functionalities. We don't really see that very often in venture capital, and so I think this is one of the most exciting categories and, frankly, computing platforms that's out there right now. And of course, we love the leadership role of the company, but I think James said it incredibly well, which is that the Fitbit vision and frankly the mission is much broader than any one specific device being pitted against another. It's, it truly is to enable people to lead healthier lifestyles. Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing that in all the actions that the company has taken. And I just think, again, this is a phenomenal horizontal market of just exceptional scale. And Fitbit has extraordinary advantages with software, with form factor, with price point, with market share. We're very excited, and I think it's very early in the category.
So, John, what do you think James has that the other similar competitors, like the fake bits out there, there are lots of people who are trying this thing. What do you think that these guys have that these other guys don't? Runtastic, I think, has some other stuff. A couple other companies are doing similar ideas.
You know, I think it's always hard to again to think about specific competitors versus looking at the entirety of what the company has from a software standpoint, social graph, R&D. They have just tremendous resources dedicated, and corporate health and wellness dedicated to this mission. So I feel very, very good. The other thing too about that you mentioned, what does James have? This is a great example of a company built literally from the beginning with extraordinary execution. So we should probably at some point talk about the early days and why this has been such a remarkable example for entrepreneurs everywhere. But James and Eric brought on very early on just exceptional depth of management with Hans, Woody, Tim, kind of just consistently from the very earliest stages, and they've executed beautifully at every step of the way. And like all startups, we've of course along the way had all sorts of challenges. Our first product was almost a year late. We had a joke in the boardroom early on, which Christmas, because James and Eric weren't ready. They weren't happy with the quality, so they have extraordinarily high quality, and you see that in our products. And we're market share leaders and highly committed to our customers.
Yeah, okay. And it's an interesting commentary on, you mentioned before companies like Garmin and the followers. I think the proof is in the pudding. If you look at our category market share, Fitbit has about 85% market share in North America in terms of dollars. And I think a lot of that's attributed to the quality of our products. But I think what people overlook too is the power of the software and the social network that's behind Fitbit. Fitbit's probably one of the largest fitness-based social networks in the world. And because of that, we have very powerful network effects.
So hardware makes software sticky.
Exactly.
One of the things that we talked about a little bit backstage is brand. And in fitness, I've been an investor in the fitness category a long time. It's very, very challenging to have a brand that is both high performance for athletes and performance activity, and also really approachable to everyone. And Fitbit's done just a remarkable job opening up this category to this enormous chunk of the market, both at the high end, but also with different form factors and price points. And that's not many companies in history have done that. Nike is one example. So it's very challenging to do that in this category, and I think it's a great testament to their brand and their vision.
So these guys out here might want to know, A, your email address so they can pitch you endlessly until you die, and B, what it takes to get funded as a hardware startup. It's really hard right now. Is from what I've heard, the only way forward is basically to do a Kickstarter, right? So you're kind of in a catch-22. You can make enough to survive, but you can't make enough to thrive and go to the next level. Yeah. So what does it take to be to pitch a hardware startup to you and your compatriots?
There's never been a better time to build a hardware company because of Kickstarter, because of just again the attention to the category, the small app manufacturing capabilities that are available to us. I think it's just like any other company. Have a mission, really, really believe, and do something very, very challenging. This was not. I always say hardware is the double black diamond of startups. It's not the easy path. It is not for the faint of heart. Doing something around the edge of a category, not interesting at all. Reinvent a category. Think about 10 and 20 years, as hard as that is. And that's what gets us excited. And we see hardware stuff that thrills us every day. I saw something yesterday that completely blew my mind. I had no idea it was even capable. And so it's out there. The next big thing is absolutely out there. But be bold. Easy to say, hard to do, I know. I can tell you it's possible. And then lastly, there's so many execution. We could have a whole panel on what James and Eric did right, and challenges we faced and what I see across our portfolio. But be capital efficient. I think the venture capital market kind of ebbs and flows of pouring money into certain things and then changing its mind. But dollars are precious as an entrepreneur always. So spend them really, really carefully and wisely. And I think that's certainly what James and Eric did. They built the company on tiny bits of money.
What should these guys do to IPO? Is that fun for you to IPO? Was that a good time?
Well, one, check off 8 years of hard work.
Okay. And 8 years of hard work. There you go.
And then IPO. No, it was a really fun day. It was just an incredible experience being on the podium, ringing the bell, and then I felt really happy for the employees, the investors, et cetera, who had been with us for 8 years. So it was a pretty momentous occasion. It was a great day.
And in terms of advice for hardware guys, what do you say?
I think the one thing that sticks in my mind is one of the things that John mentioned is really capital efficiency. We always found it difficult to raise money, so we never really depended on the fact that we'd be able to raise the next round. So our goal was, how do we get to profitability as soon as possible?
So you shouldn't just fly to Shenzhen and start making stuff?
That you can. I mean, that's what we literally did. We raised about 400K, and then Eric and I almost lived in Singapore and Indonesia for months at a time. So
you have to move to. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much, guys. What's the next Fitbit going to look like?
It's going to be awesome.
But just a little bit more. We got 16 seconds.
I think the general trend, more advanced sensors, things are going to be more fashionable, and I think it's just an exciting time to be in this category.
All right.
So
John, James, the Fitbit lads, give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.